carried away with all these side conversations going on. Why don't we get started at 6:30? I'll call to order the Public Works and Utilities Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Alderman Motley. Present. Alderman Hudson.
Here.
Alderman Wilkins. Alderman Decker.
Here.
Alderman Rogers. Alderman Magley.
Yep. Okay, we have a quorum here, so please join me in pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll open the floor for comments from citizens.
Just one comment.
Ms. Foreman, yes.
Linda Borman, 800 Jason Court. I think I mentioned this once before, and I don't know whose responsibility it is. The railroad tracks going into Hubble on Hickman, there's a railroad track, or tie there, that is about half deteriorated, and the bolts are sticking up 2-3 inches above the deteriorated. It's just where it goes right in, it's on Hickman, where it goes into the building there. You know,
We actually talked to the railroad one day about it.
Okay.
They were just happened to be right there by that intersection. We stopped and talked to them and they looked at it. I can't tell you anymore.
Okay.
But
Well, I didn't know.
They are planning to do some work on the rails through town, so he said they'd take a look at it, see what they can do.
Okay, because I didn't know whose responsibility it
It's the
was.
railroads.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No,
Any other comments from citizens?
Go ahead.
I've talked to John, who's here today, John Smith. I've talked to Boyd Harris, and I've talked to Darren Adams today. And I understand you're talking about putting a charge against the developer for the electric installation in subdivisions. And all three of them believe that we shouldn't change horses in midstream, that these should be done, that if you're gonna change it, that anything that's currently working should be exempted from that, and it should be.
we had a discussion today, the two existing that are starting, the one at Mystic Ridge and Darren's are the ones that are in process, they will be, it'll be after this, we've already got a plan on starting to collect some of that money, but
The other thing Boyd mentioned to me was that he doesn't think that the developer ought to be nicked with the cost of the improvements going to the subdivision. That, you know, anything in the subdivision makes sense, but, you know, if it's improvements going to it, that the city should stand for that, because that's affecting a lot of other people also.
Yeah, that's something we can look into for sure. But yeah, us three talked about it today, and I think everything that's in place now, platted, that's gonna be covered from the old way of how we're doing things. But going forward, we're gonna try to look at implementing that electric on that new development cost.
John had bought property last year and had talked to the city administrator and the public works director at the time, and they both told him this was the way it was, so he budgeted accordingly for what he was trying to do. We had originally planned on having plans in earlier this summer, but unbeknownst to him, when he bought the property, there was a contract for farming on the property, and so he had to buy out the farming, on at least a portion of it in order to proceed earlier, so he's not getting started. We've got plans in now, but we won't actually turn any dirt until the crops come off of there, or otherwise he's gotta buy out those portions of the crops that are taken out. And he doesn't really wanna do that, so.
Right.
Otherwise, this would've been in the works earlier.
It'll be covered.
John,
It'll
what
be
about
platted.
Darren's comment about Mexico?
Oh, Darren Adams did bring up a comment. He said that Mexico is actually putting a bounty on lots. That they're, and this is what he told me that he heard from Scott Hayes. I haven't talked to Scott Hayes or the city, but he says they're paying $10,000 for each lot that's built upon and owner occupied. So they're apparently looking to bring people into town and get more development. And that, the funds are unrestricted to the developer once that's, once it's owner occupied.
that's good to know.
You know, and that makes less sense than just not, making the developer pay the cost of electric or something, but, you know, there are, towns that apparently they're wanting more people, and whether they need more people for their businesses or what, I don't know, but they've apparently put a bounty on lots. So,
Any other comments from citizens?
Just the cat problem continues.
We have some from, well, that's on the Humane Society, info's in our packet.
Right.
Okay. You're still seeing issues, any improvement, do we have any new info from?
I know that a notice was sent to them and there were conversations that were had, but beyond that, I'm not sure. Harlan, you have?
That's the most accurate information.
any-
Now, I've been talking to Sandy, and the Humane Society will not be accepting cats anymore, so more to come on that.
Yeah, that's in our packet for our next meeting. It says the Humane Society will stop taking stray, healthy animals, or healthy cats as of January, I think it was. So here in a few months, they'll stop taking them. So we've got to figure out how we work with that. So that adds another level of complexity to the situation.
22 works pretty good.
Huh?
Nothing,
I don't
you
think I
didn't
wanna
hear
hear
a
that.
thing.
You heard it, you just want to register it, that's all.
No one clear. Well, there are more now other than across the street. All in that whole area.
Is it in the house that has the garage door open and the garage is full of junk?
They stay there. You see them coming in and out of there all the time.
There was 4 of them across Singleton Street the other night, went over there. I just didn't look fast.
There's at least 3 on the front porch all the time across the street, and sometimes 4. For 4 or 5 days, they were all gone, and then now they're all back, full force and more.
Is there anything about that garage that's left open like that?
It's an older house. The
Nobody
garage
lives there, I
door's
don't
open.
think.
And what-
Is it the house directly on the corner? Okay, yeah, he does not live
So
there.
not
He
good
lives out.
And the garage is full of junk. I mean, it would be, it's an attractive nuisance for cats to get into.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about having that house at the hearing when we do that.
There's been several,
Yeah, we're gonna have several of them.
contractors trying to reach an individual to see if he'd be willing to let go of it, the lot and tear it down, so. There's some stuff in the works, but obviously nothing right now.
But we are gonna have an administrative hearing, so that they have their 30 days, and they have their day in court, and then they've gotta do one thing or the other, you know.
When are we gonna have that?
I plan on having it sometime in November, early November. We gotta get the resources lined out. Because I'm not gonna, you'll be the jurors, the jury, but I won't be the mayor. I mean, as a mayor, I won't be the judge of it. We'll bring somebody in where somebody can say that I had a vested interest or I had a bias of some sort.
Like we did last time.
That will be a longer term fix, but would probably help the situation a lot.
Well, one of it got help yesterday because the house right behind me is torn down as of yesterday.
Hmm.
And the cats were over there inspecting this immediately when they shut the machines off, but, because their home is gone, part of it. Anyway,
Yeah,
When did you say you hope to have that hearing, Your Honor? Sometime in November,
Thank you, sir.
first half of November. Now, we gotta get a lot of things coordinated, because we have to have a report and everything.
Okay. I know maybe nothing else you want to hear, but we're still working in it, it's just,
I appreciate that. It's disappointing that, that there's nothing happening.
any other comments from citizens? Okay, we'll close comments from citizens, move on to our public works, street department activity reports in the packet. Bill, anything you wanna point out?
We, got our paint sprayer out, spent about a week, and painted all the crosswalks around schools and downtown. Built a new road out to cemetery. Got that all cut in and taken care of. Helped the park move a lot of mulch around to all the parks, playgrounds. Did a little drainage work, some culverts, some ditching work. Pretty standard month on most of it.
Any questions about the activity report? Move on to water and sewer.
We got one of the pump houses out in the country finished up, Benoit's. We still have 2 more to build. We've been working on, we worked on tying in the water main out at North Point, where Darren's subdivision is. And I think it was the first part of this month, we got in 980 of our new meters, registers, and transmitters that we can start putting in to start switching that system over.
Nice. Those Benoit's actually getting water from it now?
So the structure's done, Martin's and Jeffrey's, the contractor still has to come in and do their portion of it.
They were able to we assisted Martin's and Benoit's. We temporary that system out there so they were able to water corn. And then this last week, Schmidt's got their bean irrigation hooked together just a little late in the season for that. I think they're gonna test run it and see, make sure it's working properly, but they were pleased that they were able to water the corn. And obviously our operation needed to get rid of some water, so that helps us in the long run.
Very good. Anything else you want to point out?
We're still dealing with Slaker issues.
Currently running?
It's running, we've got one heater not running right now. It's running at 3/4 speed, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Okay. We got some DNR information in here. Some DNR information in the
I
packet?
think it's privacy rates and stuff, I think is what it
Oh,
is.
Oh, yeah, the privacy, anyone notice? This is effective September 30th, rate changes on the, based on,
all right, so it's a federal regulation that's imposed by the state of Missouri. And we require this charge for anyone with water connection inside the city limits. It has gone up, over last year.
and this ordinance is in our meeting
It is, yes.
later today.
Mhm.
So this is just staying in compliance?
Staying in compliance. It hasn't changed since 2006.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll move on to the electric department, sir?
Change a few poles out, not as many as I would like to this month, but, we've been really hitting pretty hard over there on Benton Sunset, getting that easement dug in. Piped in, a lot of fences inside the easement, so it's been making it, pretty difficult to try to navigate through and weave in and out of things and stay within our easement there, but
So why are we weaving? Why don't we tear them fences out of the easement and make them move them where they're supposed to be?
Good job, Landon.
I mean, they're not supposed to be in our easement.
I agree.
Take the skid loader down there, tear through them, tell them to move it to where it needs to be. That is my biggest complaint on it.
All the old towns, or all the old part of towns are all jammed. I mean, it probably took you 2 weeks, probably longer than it should have, just because you were
Probably, yeah.
in and out. You gotta hand dig under the fences, they gotta find a way to fit the equipment in the backyards to even get them back there.
But if they're in our easement, then we got the right to tear them out.
They're not supposed to
Easier
be
said
there.
than done.
They're not supposed to
That's right.
be in the easement, period.
I agree.
The problem is somebody has signed off on them within the city of Centralia, so there's paperwork saying,
Not all of them by.
well, maybe not all of them,
And
but
most
some
of
of
them are
them.
probably not.
There's sheds that had to been either inspected by us or the county or somebody, setbacks or fences. Somebody has signed that representing the city of Centralia, so how do you, where are you gonna go back on that?
I mean, we have an ordinance that says that, right? Do we
We
have,
do have an ordinance.
so we have something to fall back on if they come complain.
Yeah, but it also depends. I can tell you, say a couple city administrators ago drove around the block where, my house and said, okay, that fence looks good. There was nothing. So we've got to be careful. I don't disagree with you, Lynn, but we do have to be careful because if something's been approved and if a representative of the city said, okay,
I would say coordinate when you're gonna be in an area, who owns those properties you're gonna be working on that upcoming couple of weeks. Find out who we got deals with and who we don't, that we've approved it. If we haven't, then we tell them at that point that they need to move, that out of the right of way. How do you wanna do it? When we get here, we can tear it out and you can figure out what to do with it, or you wanna move ahead and move it, give them a couple week notice and do it. It'll stay there forever if we don't, we gotta start to figure out how we start to engage it, right? So that's what we gotta figure out. And so, just because it's wrong, or it's been approved, it doesn't mean it's right. And so we gotta go back and correct what's not been done properly and get it fixed, but we gotta do that with the decency of giving enough notice for somebody to move, especially if they were told to have it. So we need to do that, but at the same time, I would look ahead on your work schedules and coordinate that a little bit if you can.
Yeah,
Does that
if
make
you-
sense? Is that doable?
if you
Yeah,
let us-
we can give it a shot.
Let
No
us know,
doubt.
we can look up the fence
I just,
limits.
yeah, it just depends on what's on record and what's not.
Well, just because they were given permission doesn't mean they put it in the right place.
Well, that's the deal with everyday business around here. Anybody can inspect anything, but if it,
Is there anything in the municipal ordinance that says that a city employee cannot give someone permission to break city ordinance?
can't answer that.
I don't answer that.
I don't know about that. You wouldn't think that they would.
What's that?
Oh, you would think that they would.
It'd be like owning a piece of equipment the city owns and then someone telling somebody else, well, yeah, you can have that, we don't use it anymore.
Oh, yeah, right.
You see what I'm
I
saying?
see
You
what
can't
you're
give them
saying, yeah.
permission to do whatever that is.
I'll-
And so
I'll-
if they were to complain about it, then you could say, well, we have an ordinance that says, even though he approved it, doesn't mean that he
Yeah.
had the right to do that. Here's the ordinance that says that they don't have a right to
I
allow you
believe we
to
do
do
have
that.
something that says that they can't
Act on
act outside
behalf,
their
act on
authority.
behalf of the city
But I
of
can
Centralia
go-
as a representative of the citizen, solely. I'm sure.
I can't enter into a contract with the city, or for the city.
No,
That
right.
has another process, so I don't.
So
I don't know
I
if
think
that's
that's right. I mean, I'm sure it's on there somewhere. I found that a lot of these things we have, we just haven't enforced them or used them, that actually is already there.
I mean, a letter could be written till 30 or 60 days in advance and tell them they've got that much time to get it out, or you will remove the fence.
I feel that's fair. You give them fair warning.
And give them a copy of the ordinance at that point in the letter.
I mean, in advance notice, and then you'll get responses that, well, this was approved by so-and-so. And then we deal with those as we deal with
But
those.
so many of them have been sold so many times, they wouldn't have any idea who approved it.
Convey with the property, just like these, all the time are asking me about the covenants in a subdivision. And they don't even have, the board's not even together anymore, and it hasn't been filed, as it's supposed to be done every year. So, I mean, they don't even exist anymore, really, but
So if an ordinance is passed on a certain time, and so say the fencing was put in before the updated ordinance, would they be grandfathered in? So we can't do anything about it.
That ordinance has been on the books for many, many years.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
think-
saying, though, there are some out
I
there.
don't
well,
think
there
we've ever
probably
had
be some out there.
Yeah.
And at that point, you'd have to put a flag on the lot, and when it changes hands, it's not grandfathered in anymore, you make them fix it then. You put a system in place that when it does change hands, and it gets corrected at that time.
So if we give them a 30-day notice, nothing happens, what are you guys okay with happening from our guys to do? What are you okay with? I have to know that answer because, I mean,
Cause we're gonna be the one catching the heat.
yeah,
Out in the
yeah, I
field.
mean, you go back there and tear somebody's fence out.
Yeah, you'll need to say it's a directive from, it'll be us, but I think the first thing we gotta do too is make sure Sydney's aware of what we're doing, how we're gonna go about doing it. And then get her buy-off on that of how we implement a program or a plan to move forward to eliminate these nuisance, restrictions that are in the.
Pre-existing fences, I wouldn't even care if they put a big double gate on each side of the property.
That we could give them that
So where
option,
we can
but.
get equipment in.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even give them that option. Don't put it on the easement. Nobody else will let you put anything else on their easement.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously something we watch a lot closer now than
Yeah.
what it has in the past, but we're going back in houses and development that's been there for,
It's gonna take effort, because it's existed for a long period of time, a lot of houses, like you said, have transferred, or they haven't transferred even for that, they're gonna have to be noticed, those folks, that we're gonna, and they have a right to say somebody told them to do that, so they're no longer here, so this is what we're doing moving forward, and based upon the city's guidance. So can you check on that for us? I think that's what we need to come back and talk about, again, we talked about it all night long, but I think.
Well, I think they need to do something in writing, not just,
Oh, no, wait,
not just as somebody told me.
if we don't have anything in writing, they have to bring us proof, and if they can't bring us proof,
Right.
then.
Yeah.
we move
It
forward.
might be necessary to send certified letters to make sure the people actually did get notified.
I mean, that's 2 weeks it took them to dig around the fences and all that, but they could have been doing something else 2 weeks.
Well, it still exists if you come back 2 months later, or 2 years later, right? Same issue happens for you guys, you go over to work again if you have to for some reason, or one night, or whatever it may be. So it needs to be eliminated as a nuisance for us.
Well, and when we had that big windstorm come through here however many years ago, that's what prevented the electric from getting turned back on in a lot of areas quicker because they couldn't get through.
Well, even on your 10-foot easements, when you've got overhead in the backyard, you can't get a truck
Yeah.
or a small truck back in there. Or even our digger truck in order to set a pole. So, I mean, that's why we're hitting these backyard easements hard, trying to get them in, be done with them.
So you don't have anything above ground?
How much more do you have to do?
A lot.
Oh, yeah, lots, lots and lots.
But, I mean, we're getting the hang of it. I mean, everybody's getting the hang of it. I feel like we're doing a pretty solid job when it comes to, if we can stay on a project, we can get a fair amount knocked out.
Sounds like we need a little more,
So where are you going from Sons or Denton?
The Adams, or not Allen.
Allen and,
South of Bruton, and then after that easement, we're going to Tidball. And underground in south side Tidball.
sounds like we need a little more information and a little more discussion on this one. Anything else you want to point out from the activity report?
Other than basically finishing up the digging over there, we had a couple faults out on one of the Benoit's pivots that we've been able to locate, fix, and get that up and going so we can at least move this pivot now. Our fault locating equipment is getting kind of out of date. We had one really good spot for one of the faults and got that taken care of ourselves. Benoit's ended up having to get somebody else to come out with better fault locating equipment to find the second one. And, but they found it, we ended up getting in there and getting it taken care of, fixed up.
Do we have any of that on the capital plan or for future years?
I don't think so. Wouldn't be a bad idea though, especially, I've got some stuff I can bring you some information on one that would be real nice, especially once we get feeders in.
We don't necessarily need the Ferrari, but.
Well, it's not the Ferrari by any means, but it'll be a really good piece of equipment, so.
It should be something that we put out there for a future budget.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The next thing on here is the hammering.
The wholesale agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so we did talk about this at the meeting, the first meeting in August, that Ameren had not raised their wholesale rates for us. I believe since 14, if I'm correct.
It's been several
Yeah.
years.
They haven't changed their rate since 2014. They were going to change it right about the time COVID hit and it got put on the back burner. So, that's why the increase is so big. It's because it's been so long since they've had to do it. They would like to put this in place February 1st.
Wasn't this like $4 or $5 per person? So.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that's what, we figured out last month. It would round it out to be about $5 per person. It would be the increase on the bill every month.
Okay. Any discussion on this? I'm not sure we have much of a choice in this scenario.
That's just a pass-through, that cost is a pass-through, we're not adding anything to it.
Right.
We'll make sure that's on that.
Yeah. This
The
is
city's
what-
not adding a 10% surcharge on the increase, it's being mandated
Right.
by the contract of wholesale distribution, so.
Okay. Mr. Rush?
Activity report for myself. I would just highlight, we've had some decent luck on the wastewater project, slightly. Donaldson's did come in and complete the Terracon report. All that has come back good. Fishers is currently 2 to 3 days out from wanting to start filling both basins. So both floors are, lower basin floor is done. And then the upper basin, they plan to be done Wednesday morning, possibly start filling Wednesday. So, they still have some things to knock off on their list with, the outside of the basin work, but as far as the floors go and the actual basin construction, it should be completed by Wednesday.
Have they started any of the, we'll call it exterior work?
Some grading in the middle of, then not the ditch work, but they've just graded, some dirt in between the cells. And then they are still waiting on the pit for the telescoping valve on the upper basin. It's not on site yet. The pipe and valve are both on site, but the pit is not. So they said that they're waiting on that to be here. Bartlett came out last week and surveyed and marked that out for them. So just kind of playing it by ear on when they're ready to start pumping water in there. Like Aaron stated, the guys have done, got Benoit's pump house constructed out there. That's something that I would highlight. So we've got crews. When Martin's bid this for the 3 pump houses, they're 3-sided, basically pole barn sheeted with metal. That bid came in at, I think, $92,000 for them to construct that. Aaron and his crew done a good job on the first one. I don't see anything gonna change on the other ones. We're gonna be, these guys doing it, they're gonna be under 20,000 for materials in them, so I think that's huge to highlight on caliber of people we've got here and what they're capable of doing here, so.
Being that we're struggling with budget on some of this, so it's,
Yeah, very big,
definitely appreciated.
very big chunk of, work that they took on to do that, so.
Tell your group, that appreciate what you're doing, all your departments. You see the kind of, look for those kind of savings, and that's great.
Other than that, wastewater side, Douglas Farm, dirt work is completed. They still are trying to install the electric service for that pivot, but the grass is seeded out there for the rest of the farm, so that's kind of taking off as that starts to progress here through the fall. Other than that, just coordinating with the wastewater projects. Obviously North Point's been a pretty heavy topic here in the last month and continuing on this month. And then just kind of staying with these guys, watching what they're doing all the crews have been jamming work and moving, so appreciate that. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Do you wanna talk about that machine stuff now?
Yeah, you might bring it up as business under your, it got approached to you, then brought to me.
Yeah,
so-
okay, so, the vac trailer that we currently have, the park is interested, reached out to myself, and Mayor Cox. They are kinda wanting to see what we can do on that. Right now, the market, I found some that were auctioned off less than probably 2 months ago. Those costs of the trailers that we have double, if not triple, the amount of hours on it. They're selling for $25,000 to $38,000. We budgeted $160,000 for our vac truck. With the inflation and everything, when we contracted that vac truck, it went to the $180,000, what we presented to you guys when that took place.
And what was the budget again? Sorry.
$160,000 is what the original vac truck was budgeted
So
for.
we're 20 over.
20,000 over. So what Mayor and Tara and I have discussed, if the park, I mean, here, our thinking is if the park can get us to that 20,000 to make up the cost that we had, budgeted for, and then the 180,000. If they can make that up, and then we're also selling the sewer jetter trailer
Separately.
separate, because the truck that we bought is a vac truck, sewer truck combo. So if we can make up that difference on the budget, the park can do that, then that gets us back in the green, and then whatever we sell the sewer jetter trailer is just, surplus of that equipment fund, so. They're just wanting to see what our thinking is on it.
What's
Have
the-
you
what
been
would
able
the
to
park
get for the
use
other
it for?
trailer?
Do what?
Do you know what we could get for the other trailer?
I would say if I had to put a number on it, probably 15 to 25,000.
Electric wires are on top of
The sewer jetter, yeah.
So if they go
So-
big, then they
Uh,
borrow
jetter
from
go
us
for?
quite a bit right now.
15 to 25,000 probably is what we can
Thank you.
do. What Purple Wave right now, we just sold the water department's old truck on there, was that Friday? They came pick that up? So it ended on the 13th. We were hoping $11,000 to get out of that truck. They brought 20.
Oh,
So,
my.
market's a little warm right now for used equipment.
Yes, it is.
We figured, as we were talking, we figured on the Purple Wave that the vac unit would probably bring 30 to 35,000, you think? So I mean, but the issue is it's the taxpayers' it's interdepartment funds really to a point, right? So do we double dip you don't want to double dip the taxpayer if we can keep from it. So I think we deals with the school or it's a taxpaying bucket that we pay taxes on. We need to be careful to make sure that if it's a private entity, I still get all you can for it, if they're willing to pay for it. But, and that's kind of where we come up with that 20,000, gets us off that, plus we end up on the green on top. Something y'all think about, if you have a wholesale problem with that, speak up, throw it out. But we were trying to figure out how we get there, because they didn't want us to get on Purple Wave and get into that situation, because,
Yeah.
They do use it quite a bit, and they probably would use it more if our guys don't, used to be not a hot topic, but there's so much stuff in the ground now that vac trailer is very valuable when it comes to digging anything around any utilities, especially out at the golf course. Their irrigation line is usually where they have leaks, and the thing that's on top of their irrigation line is wire.
well,
So-
we would hope that if they have it, that they would get all of that caught up. I mean, Landon, you're familiar with the golf course out there quite a bit. I mean, you've helped and everything else.
They got a lot of leaks. They need one, real bad.
So it needs to be utilized. You'll be
Yes.
overseeing that to make sure it's getting.
I asked
full
her
functionality.
tonight, if you get this, are you gonna get all the leaks fixed this year?
I knew you were the right guy.
What was his answer?
And then,
If you don't come up with anything else for me to do.
So, no.
I mean, being that it is taxpayers' money regardless of,
Yeah.
is that even asking too much? If we could sell the other one for, let's say, 15.
I was thinking, what are we knocking down to 15,000? and 15, if we
If
sold
we
them both for
both
50.
of them and became whole, and maybe had a couple grand extra to make sure we didn't have any extra costs that hit us, but I mean, to me, it almost seems a lot for 20, and then we're gonna sell the other one
Well,
for 50.
maybe what we should do is sell the jetter first on
And
Purple
then
Way.
see what the difference
See what we
is.
bring, and then whatever we figure out from that, once we know what that brings, that helps us to make a decision on what we do with them. That way, we know what we got for sure in our pocket, right, and what we're short.
Yeah,
And then we kinda can, that's a good idea, I think.
yeah.
How many hours are on the jetter?
So,
Four,
4 something?
it's either 4 or 500.
Yeah,
Like,
no. And this, the vac trailer, I would say probably
I think it's
500 or 600.
I can pull it up on emails.
The ones that sold for 30, it was a contracted price of 38, had 1,600 hours. So,
So, I mean, it's obviously worth,
oh, absolutely.
Worth the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mike's
that's what,
got 470,
yeah, so, we're talking quarter of the hour.
the Jetter's got 528.
we definitely want to become healthy and, you know, versus being a whole 20 grand between
Right.
what was in the
Yeah,
budget and
so
our
that
budget.
one budget, yeah.
It feels odd making, you know, supplementing our budget with it, to sell it to the parks
We
department.
shouldn't, the taxpayers pay twice, as far as I'm concerned, what they just do that. Because it's still an asset of the taxpayers. It's in a different bucket at the parks, but that appreciation still stays with the city in some form or fashion, you know, so I agree with you 100%.
Maybe it's not right at 180 between the two pieces, maybe it's a little more, because there will be incidental costs and stuff.
I would say let's try to sell the jetter and see what we get out of it.
Yeah.
Cause they might blow our minds when they get more than what they say.
It might-
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that truck would cost 20,000.
Better get on her while everybody's out of their mind, man. Get going.
Anything else, Mike?
I think that's it. That's all I got. What you got?
Any as may arise?
No, we did not. They skipped over and went to me. Do you want me to come
Should we go
to-
back to 7D for the discussion on the
I
electric
missed something.
infrastructure?
That's, well, we talked about it in the,
The comments and citizens
Yeah.
kind of discussed it, but,
do you guys have any discussion on that? What you guys, your opinion is on the electric infrastructure,
for new
new
development,
development, subdivision stuff?
I'd like to get some direction.
We presently do all the labor, we pay for the materials and put it in. So, I think, and part of the contractor said, we can't believe that you do the labor, let alone pay for the material just recently. And so as we started, we've also looked at streets, so we kind of had a discussion about, we talked a little bit about what we talked about, was the streets and making sure that what we get handed over to us. And so we've done some, I had these guys do some studying of what looks like appropriate, warranty on the road when they turn it over to the city. And that's 2 years is what we're thinking, somewhere in that neighborhood, as we've talked about a little
That's
bit.
what we would like to see.
We'd like to
Is
see
it a
that.
2-year now?
One.
It's one.
I thought it was a 2-year now.
Yeah.
It's one. It should be 2 years for sure.
Oh, that's right. They got Boyd for 2 years out there at that Southwest.
Right.
Made him go back in the old park, fix spots for those back there.
Yeah, I mean, we're just seeing a lot of,
Inspections, doing audits of tickets, and then actually, while the pour's going on, getting some core samples, and have those tested for hardness by a certified third party that we talked about. We wouldn't be doing it, a third party would do it. It's well worth some money spent up front to make sure that people know that we're gonna have an expectation that the bag mix is what it's supposed to be based on the scope, specifications. Otherwise, we get handed things that we can spend a day on today. It looked like to me, and I remember when that was all put in, it was coming apart before the houses were finished. So we want to make sure that we protected our investment and our partnership when we take something on the site. They've done a really good job. I want to say that I think you guys have done a really good job collaborating, working on that, and trying to get some real data for us and some real teeth into something that we can move forward with that's reasonable. compared to what Columbia and everybody else does, okay? And so, we wanna be fair, but at the same time, the other people are providing the labor for free. They have the contractor have to put that stuff in typically and all that, so. We wanna be good partners, with development, always, no question about that. That, it always bothers me when people think that they see it a certain way, and feel like we're not wanting to be good partners in development of Citizens Radio, you know, as far as growth, but, we all know costs are going up dramatically.
Matt said it really well in our meeting a couple weeks ago, that when a new development comes in, and if it comes in, say at the beginning of the budget year, and we have to order a bunch of, you know, electric infrastructure.
$200,000 of
It's
stuff.
not something that was budgeted, that we're having to take in and figure out how we're gonna pay for it with our current budget. So it's, especially with the inflated prices of transformers and wire and all of that, it's not gonna get easier.
We're a healthy city, but we don't have a lot of general electric fund.
No, we don't. And I think that's one thing we talked about before, we discussed this, I'll say loosely, was, you know, we need to consider mirroring what other communities do, so that we're not taking all of the burden, because eventually we'll run into financial problem if we do that. We need to be healthy. That's kind of like when we talked about some of the stuff with, drilling into the street. We said we shouldn't be absorbing all that cost ourselves, whatever that cost was. I think we changed the amount we charge on it, so that we at least broke even with the electric, and we should do something similar. And if it means most communities pay the material or the people pay the material and we do the labor, then maybe we should mirror that.
Well, I think that's above and beyond. I think if we do, we're still partnering pretty well by doing that. Would you say that, Matt?
A lot of towns around they're like Columbia, the developer has to pay for all of it, installation and everything, the labor.
We're paying all of that, right?
But we still wanna provide the labor and put the stuff
Electric.
in, you just gotta pay for it, so.
Yeah, and that's what we're really
bottom line
talking
is,
about
we
right
just-
now.
Columbia has always, well, as long as I've been around, Columbia has charged for water, but it's up to the developer to put it in. But the developer hires his own contractor to do it. So they're not, a lot of times they're being hired at non-prevailing wage. Whereas if the city does it, if the city contracts it out, they have to pay prevailing wage. Otherwise, the city crew has to do it themselves.
Well, if we're talking electric, how do you feel, Matt, about your crew still
No,
doing
they
it?
put it in.
Yeah,
Prevailing wage.
I mean, I just send it, that way we know exactly where it's at. It's done
That was my
to
thought.
grade.
right. Well,
It's.
Yeah.
and with the water, it's the
gives me
same
peace of
way.
mind, I know.
Well, I agree.
That's one of the reasons why the city wants to take, to install it themselves, is because they have the assurance of the quality of what they get there.
Well,
And the
I-
guys are familiar with it if they have to go
Right.
out there 3 months down
Well,
Cause
and
right
it's
now,
also-
like, material alone is costing us right between like $32 to $38 per foot. I mean,
we
depending
had one,
upon
was about $100,000, about $80 to
I think
$100,000.
you had 80 on this stuff out here roughly, wasn't it?
98,
Okay.
that was,
100,000?
yeah.
But for
Before,
me, we're actually partnering those two, by providing the labor for free, we're still
Yeah.
trying to be a fiscal partner in owning cost, you know, an hourly day of the,
Yeah.
our department, so.
And then that would be my 2 cents, we still wanna do our part.
Yeah,
All
absolutely, yeah,
communities.
no, we're,
But the city can't be on the hook for the changing prices all the time, and we don't mark it up, but just, here's the actual cost.
Well, the developer just needs to know up front too, thus the reason we said we need a clean spot to put the ordinance in of what it's gonna look like moving forward. We talked about that today. And that's why there's, for Smith and the Mystic Ridge and the one out here, those are already, we got the paperwork in and have been started. We wanna kind of finish those the way they were started, but then move forward. Then that way, you have your eyes wide open as you make a business decision to buy property and what the development cost is gonna be, because you can take that into consideration up front. But we also know things are going up. Houses are gonna come down some, maybe square footage, but they're not gonna come back like they were 2 years ago. So those prices are gonna stay, it's gonna cost more to have living in homes built and everything else, so I think it's the fair way to go about it.
I know, there's also some, I know we've got some that have started, or we've got the paperwork started, but how much of those costs gone up? I mean, significantly.
oh, yeah, from from the original plat that was
Oh,
installed, or you're talking, so when did Darren do that first? Mystic out there, that phase? Shoot.
No, more than that.
It's been more than that. So yeah, you're talking,
There's,
Huge,
there should be a
huge
statute of
jump, yeah.
limitations, I mean, because prices have changed drastically, you know.
Well, and I
We
would,
should have the ability, if it hasn't started in X number of years.
well, I would say,
to
and I would say also
update the price.
with the value of your property that you're gonna sell it for, it's went
gone
up
up
proportionally
pretty
pretty
well.
well, so
And
get a
it's-
pretty good deal on it if you're selling today and we're providing the product. That cost is 12 years old, so I think it's the way to do it. I mean, I think it's a clean way to do it because you're in the middle of it, you know, the streets we can't change because we were told by legal counsel that if we we're gonna change the expectations for the specifications of the streets, couldn't do that in the middle of subdivision, so I feel like it probably goes for all utilities right now, and we just make that clean spot, that's my thought. And we want these people to have invested money and a business plan with it, and, I think that, but then we can't have any complaints moving forward if the development starts, you know what you're in for up front, right? Is that fair to say, Mr. Smith?
That's fair.
I think that's more fair, but I think you gotta do it that way. I mean, nobody can say that things change in the beginning. My thought.
But I would question if somebody's got a plat that's been out there for 10 years and haven't started it. It's one thing if construction started.
Well,
or about
we
to
don't have
start,
any
and
plants
initial
left out there,
steps
do we?
happen.
no,
No, as far as I know, everything's built out now.
Yeah,
yeah.
So the only outstanding ones are, North Point and Misty Creek.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So it is a good place to
So
make a
I would
break.
say, you know, there may be a window that we say, okay, these people are locked in, what was quoted, but.
Till this year. That's what him and I talked about here at the end of the day, is that, you know, could we even look at putting a year on it and saying after this 2026, 2027, whatever maybe, the line changes. That's something we can look at implementing.
Yeah,
Just-
I think we should.
Give them time for development in a time period that's
Yeah.
reasonable, but at the same time, don't hang us out for 10 years and we're looking at another 30-40%
Yeah.
in materials. So,
Okay. Any as may arise?
Second.
Got a motion and second to adjourn, all in favor? Any opposed?